behalf of the City of Denton, Mayor Chris Watts, and my colleagues on the Denton City Council, I welcome you to Denton. Nothing like an energy summit at the end of July on a weekend of 100-degree temperatures. I think you planned this. Very shrewd. To remind us just how important our energy policy is for our citizens, our businesses, and our local economy. Congressman Burgess can be proud to represent a district that is home to energy innovators and nationally recognized leaders in driving America's energy future. We are proud to have the University of North Texas and the world-class research coming out of this very building here in our city limits. So it's a great blessing for us to have as a city and the potential partnerships and current partnerships we have to drive some of these issues forward. In Denton, we're also blessed to have Denton Municipal Electric, a publicly owned electric utility that gives our citizens local control over how our energy is generated and distributed. Back in 2009, before renewable energy was cool, Denton Municipal Electric led the nation by making investments to power our city by 40% wind energy. And because we're Denton, we're not content with that. So recently, the City Council passed an ambitious plan to take Denton to 70% renewable energy by 2019 by ramping up our investments in wind and solar generation. We're doing this while keeping our rates low and maintaining award-winning reliability. And Phil Williams, General Manager of Denton Municipal Electric, is here, and I think he'll be talking more on that in a future session here. All that to say, Denton's a perfect place to host an Energy Summit, and we thank Congressman Burgess for his leadership on this issue and organizing this important event here at the University of North Texas. We also want to thank University of North Texas for their leadership and for hosting today's summit. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Finley Graves, UNT Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs.
Thanks. And good morning, everyone. Good morning. I am indeed Finley Graves, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at UNT. And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you on part of the administration, our staff, and all of our students as well, both to the university and to the summit as well. And this summit's been organized, I believe now 11 years by Congressman Burgess's staff, so we appreciate that very much. Now, it's also my pleasure to introduce Dr. Burgess, United States Representative from the 26th District. Everybody knows him, so you know, introductions kind of hard to come up with. But he, you know, I'm sure all of you are familiar with his medical background, his involvement with health issues at the national level. But as UNT Provost, what I want to emphasize is he's an UNT graduate. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Biology and a Master of Arts in Psychology from the university. And in recognition of his advocacy for healthcare legislation aimed at reducing healthcare costs and putting the needs of patients first, the University of North Texas Health Science Center awarded Dr. Burgess an honorary Doctor of Public Service in 2009. Relative to his sponsorship of the annual Energy Summit, Dr. Burgess currently serves on the prestigious House Energy and Commerce Committee. I might also mention that this is the 7th time that Dr. Burgess has chosen UNT to host the summit, and the 5th time here at Discovery Park, the home of the UNT College of Engineering. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Burgess to the podium.
Well, thank you, and thank you for that very kind introduction. Kevin, thank you. Let me turn that on. Kevin, thank you for your kind words as we started this. Is anyone monitoring?
There we go.
That sounds better. And yeah, I really do appreciate University of North Texas. I didn't realize it was the 5th time that we've done it here, but that is, this has been a big part of this event. And just if I could, indulge me for a moment to walk briefly through the history of this event. It started in 2005 in the parking lot of a Home Depot in Flower Mound, Texas. An Assistant Secretary of Energy wanted to do an energy event in the district, and we kind of hastily pulled that together, and Home Depot wanted to showcase all of their energy efficiency items, which again we did in July in the parking lot of Home Depot. So it got people's attention that the ability to provide energy was important. At the same time, my wife's an architect, and we were building a house in Louisville. And I had this grandiose idea that we needed solar panels, we needed windmills. I didn't even know, Kevin, about the zoning laws. I guess I would have found out about them had I pursued that. But my wife, much more practical, said, well, why don't we use off-the-shelf energy efficiency technology that is tried and true and available and not too terribly expensive and could have a good return on investment. And I thought, you know, that's just really not what I had in mind, that we might shave 5 or 10% off our energy bill, but it's really not going to move the needle like I would like to. Well, I was in for quite an education. And the things are generally available. Of course, the high efficiency air conditioners, and some of those have been mandated by federal law, but the efficient attic system, the foam insulation in the walls that was sprayed in, the tankless water heater, never would have believed what a difference that would have made as far as energy consumption. You don't heat the water all day long, you only heat it when the requirement is there to use hot water. And low energy, the low E-glass on windows so that you reduce the solar gain during the hottest part. The orientation of the house so that it took advantage of the low sun in the winter months and the overhangs that blocked the sun in the summer months. All of that combined lowered our energy bill in excess of 40% compared to the house we had the summer before, and the summer of 2004, the summer of 2006 were essentially comparable as far as the number of hot days. And believe it or not, we're in kind of a cool spell here in North Texas. Yesterday was our first 100-degree day. That's very late for us, but never fear. I think we've got a long string of them ahead of us. So by the end of the summer, none of us will feel cheated out of our 100-degree days. And then right after that summit in July of 2005, you'll remember the next thing that happened was Katrina at the end of August, and then we saw gasoline prices go up over $3 a gallon, which was very startling. I promise you it was startling because I heard from so many people who called my office and what the heck is going on with gasoline prices. So energy prices and the ability of a consumer to make decisions that affect their energy consumption, and therefore their energy bill, really seemed like the area where I wanted to focus. Now, it would be easy enough to keep the Department of Energy involved and come down and talk about some big federal program, but really this is about you, this is about the consumer, this is about what a family can do to manage their energy costs. And after all, when you do it that way, the cumulative effect of that, or the aggregate effect of that, and we may hear from some of our experts later this morning, the aggregate effect of that can have a profound effect on the consumption of energy when you look at it on a much larger scale. On the gasoline front, obviously the cost now is down lower than it was that summer. We did see it spike a couple of years after that to over $4 a gallon. In 2003, I got on the waiting list for a Prius. Then when gasoline went up so high, I looked like a true visionary. But actually, the reason I was interested in it in 2003 was starting in the Congress that year. I heard from a number of people about air quality issues. Most of our air quality issues around here, 65% come from mobile sources. So that seemed like a logical way. Again, as a consumer, as an individual, it seemed like a logical way to tackle that problem as well. During the course of the evolution of this energy summit, I did invite Drew Campbell, who at the time was with the New Car Dealers Association. He gave such an effective talk that summer. The gasoline prices were up over $4 a gallon, and he's a very entertaining speaker. Even though he's no longer with the New Car Dealers Association, he is very involved with automotive technology and what's just around the corner, what's just over the horizon. So he is going to continue to be, he's graciously consented to be part of this morning. The whole involvement of automobiles really began that summer of 2008, 2009, when energy prices, gasoline prices became so high. We did do this event one time in the College of Business Administration because of the LEED certification of the building. So We were happy to have that association. And I just want to thank Dr. Terry Berry for his assistance to the staff for the arrangements for this summit today. Look, everybody knows, no secret, we're in a fast growth area. Texas, I think I pointed this out last year, Texas gained 4 congressional representatives in the last reapportionment. Think about that for a minute. That means the entire population of Arkansas moved to Texas in the 10 years previous, in the decade from 2000 to 2010. A phenomenal growth in this area, and it shows no evidence of slowing down. I do come back and forth from Washington every week, flying over the northeast part of the county of the 26th district, coming in every weekend. You can see that growth, which is moving north. It did slow down a little bit, to be sure, in 2008, 2009, but I promise you it is back and back with a vengeance. There is no telling what the population of this area will be at the next 10-year census when it's taken in 2020, but I rather expect we are going to continue to demonstrate that sort of growth. Estimates of the population, every congressional district is supposed to have 710,000 residents. Estimates that I have seen online, this district and the one down just west of Houston, down in Sugar Land, Texas, are probably the two have the highest populations, estimated populations of all the congressional districts in Texas. Those out west tend to get relatively smaller. Those around in the 50-mile radius of Interstate 35E tend to grow and in our case, grow very rapidly. As we grow, what happens to our energy demand? It grows too. It makes it important to focus on energy efficiency. We're going to hear from the folks this morning that provide us with energy, but we can make their jobs a little bit easier if we're careful about the energy we consume. The demand that North Texas is placing on the energy grid runs the risk of outpacing supply, and every year it's a chance for us to sit down and talk with each other about ways that we might consider our impact on energy consumption. Today's summit is going to primarily focus on steps you and your family and local businesses can take to become more energy efficient and to conserve energy. I do get literally thousands of calls. We probably get somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000 calls, emails, letters every year. Just in general, in the congressional district that I represent, we tend to be a very active and vocal congressional district, which is good. It keeps me zoned in on the things that are important, but a good number of those are about energy. If the gas prices spike, I'm quite certain to hear from a great number of you. If electricity prices spike, you are not shy about letting me know that you notice that and that you wonder what I think about it and what I am likely to be doing about it. Energy consumption, energy availability is a national security issue. We've seen it up close and personal several times in the last 10 or 15 years that I've been in Congress. It's a national security issue, it's an economic issue, and I cannot think of a single person who could construct a political platform that was based upon wasting energy. It makes no sense. Wise use of energy, conservation of energy, using energy when it's appropriate. Nobody likes the concept of, what we heard in one of our energy hearings several years ago, where someone came in and talked to us and said, without the availability of energy, life is cold, brutal, and short. Perhaps that was a little harsh in that observation, but that stuck with me through the years. Energy is important. It's important for our economy. It's one of the things that's given us the blessings of great growth in the state of Texas, and really, in spite of the economic downturn, our economy here stayed relatively unscathed through that time. And of course, it was because of contributions of the energy sector to the general economy, and then as energy prices reduced, there was great concern whether the economy of Texas would be able to withstand that. There was a point 25 years ago when that was hard for Texas to withstand. This time we seem to have weathered that economic turmoil with some disruption, to be sure, but the disruption was minimal. I do believe that when it comes to energy, efficiency is a big part of the equation. Exploration, development, obviously part of the equation, and alternate forms of energy are going to be part of the equation. An all of the above strategy is the correct policy. So nuclear, wind, solar, clean natural gas, oil that we have off our shores and up in Alaska, all of the above. But a big part, and a big portion of that is energy conservation, and that's why we're here this morning. So with that, let me turn it back over to Eric, who's going to introduce our first panel.
And we're actually running ahead of schedule, so I'm going to take a moment also just to do a little bit of housekeeping. As you came in, you should have gotten a copy of the agenda, and if you did not,
Wait, if we're good on, before you start housekeeping, let me just, I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has at this point. We always get to the end and people feel like they didn't get a chance to ask their questions.
My name is James. I'm actually down from Duncanville, so I'm not in your area, but
Welcome.
You mentioned national security, and part of what the Department of Defense looks at as a solution is investing more in renewable energy. So I'm wondering if you could speak to what Congress might or might not do for promoting renewable energy.
Well, as you know, and that is a big part of the energy budget every year. There's some argument whether it's big enough or whether it's too big. Renewable energy is going to be part of the national conversation on energy, regardless of who's in the Congress, regardless of who's in the White House, because it is part of the energy future. My belief is it's just as much a part of the future as is nuclear energy. I would not weight one in over the other, but all of the above are going to be important to us. But just to bring us back to today, the reason for doing this today, it gives us a chance to focus on what we might be doing as consumers. Yeah, the Department of Energy, in spite of my best efforts, will always be there. It will always be deciding things, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But this is more about what we as consumers can decide, the decisions that we can make. If Kevin and the city of Denton make a big investment in renewable energy, they still don't want us to waste it. They want us to use it wisely. We don't want to see if it costs more for us to have our electric meters run with renewable energy, we want to be certain that we're making wise purchases on that. I hope I've been fair to you, Kevin, with that. I didn't mean to involve you. But that is, again, the focus this morning is on what we as consumers, we as families, we as small businesses can do. But welcome to Denton County. We're happy to have you here. Take a look around while you're here. The Discovery Park, for those of you who don't know, is kind of a unique facility. This was when I was just a simple, humble country doctor. This was a Texas Instruments location. It had just been built. I had several patients who worked here, but it went away. As far as the Texas Instruments aspect, it went away really pretty early after the development of this building. It sat relatively unused for 10 years' time, but in very, very good shape for an unused building. And then an agreement was made with the University of North Texas for acquiring the facility after about 10 years' time. And this was back in 2002, 2003. And I think the association has been a good one. And certainly the School of Engineering has done a lot of great things out here. There's a lot of innovation that takes place at this campus, and we're very grateful to have it as part of the North Texas family. And Provost, I don't like to correct you, but actually, I know nothing about psychology. I got my master's degree in mammalian physiology, so if anyone wants to know about the hibernating habits of a ground squirrel, I'm your guy. But I'm really not so good about that mouse going through a maze. All right, Eric, carry on.
Thank you. So with that, just a couple of things. Wanted to make sure that you did get an agenda. If you didn't, just let one of the staff know. We've got a couple of interns that are in here. You'll see Ethan is kind enough to be here today. They've got cards hanging around their neck. And Andrew is over here, or Catch Me. We'll be glad to get those. The other thing also, I'll invite the first presenter to come on up. We'll be starting off the morning with a keynote from Mr. Magnus. He's the CEO of Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT. And we're not going to go into introductions with each one of the panels. Along with the agenda that you received when you came in, you should have also gotten a bio packet. We'll be glad to get those for you as well. That way you can use this, you can take notes on it, whatever you'd like to do, but you'll also have the information on each one of the speakers, including the panel that we'll have later, and Drew Campbell that Dr. Burgess mentioned earlier. If you need restrooms, they're just down the hall. If you need a bottle of water, we've got those as well. So welcome to all of you, and I will turn it over now to Mr. Magnus.
here. My name is Bill Magnus. I'm the CEO of the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, and want to tell you a little bit about our role in the electric system, how we generate the power that's used in Texas, and then talk some about the use of the power, the demand side of our equation, which is a whole lot about our energy conservation and energy efficiency out here. Now, I was told there was a little clicker for the slides. Is that available? Great. Okay, thank you. First thing, what is ERCOT? I'll kind of start you at the map on this slide. If you look at the map, you see there are 3 electric interconnections in the United States. And basically what an interconnection means is, take the Western interconnection. Power, while there are lots of utilities, lots of folks producing and transmitting power, all over the Western interconnection, the power can flow, we call it asynchronously, in that entire area. The same thing in the Eastern interconnection. But Texas, or the ERCOT part of Texas anyway, has a separate interconnection, and historically has maintained an island status, in a sense, in the United States in the electric grid. We have limited connections to Mexico, to the east, to the west, but those are connections that Texas controls. That is, the power is not flowing without our say-so. And ERCOT controls what we call DC ties that lets limited power flow into Mexico and in and out of ERCOT. But when we need to make sure we have just the Texas system protected, we have the ability to do that in a way that lots of other places in the United States don't. One area where you saw big impacts in 2003 when there was a big blackout on the East Coast, that spread Ohio to Michigan to New York, all around. That sort of thing we can hopefully isolate ourselves from if we saw it in the future. Down at the bottom of the slide, key thing about ERCOT, we are not a generating company. We don't transmit power. We don't own a whole lot of assets. We have a whole lot of computers and some smart people and a few buildings. Our role was established by the Texas legislature in 1999 when the electric market was restructured in Texas. And we serve a number of, I kind of think of them as neutral or referee roles. In the areas of Texas where there's competitive markets, if you want to switch electric providers, the electric provider gives that transaction to ERCOT, and we make sure it's done efficiently and effectively and not held up by the competing electric provider. So kind of an umpire or referee in that data transfer. Similarly with wholesale power, making sure that the folks who are transmitting power, whether it's in North Texas, South Texas, wherever, it gets onto our ERCOT-wide grid, that those folks are compensated pursuant to the rules that we have in place for how that all is supposed to work. So we're sort of a giant accounting and settlement agent. Probably the thing that we are most known for, especially on bad days, is the top one though, the grid reliability. ERCOT manages the flow of electricity throughout the region, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from our control room in Taylor, Texas. And we're managing the transmission system, that is the big wires that go all around the state. And then the distribution utilities manage that wire that comes into your house. We're managing the flow of electricity and trying to keep the lights on and the air conditioners running 24 hours a day. We are one of, what am I clicking at? There we go. The United States is set up in electricity markets, much of the United States. As you can see here, these independent system operators, some are called regional transmission organizations. There are several of them in Canada and in the United States that operate electricity markets, most of them, except for Texas, subject to rules of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Because ERCOT has its own grid, its own system, we're not subject to FERC jurisdiction. So our regulator is the Public Utility Commission of Texas, and we're able to make decisions based on what state leadership indicates ought to be done rather than having it under federal control. So that's a very unique thing about the ERCOT system. But we're one of several entities that serve similar functions in different parts of the country. Within ERCOT, there are a lot of different kinds of providers. Denton Municipal Electric, as the mayor mentioned, a municipally owned utility. CoServe, who you'll hear from later, is a cooperative. A lot of cooperatives were established in Texas in the 1930s, 40s forward, especially in more rural areas where there was not a lot of service. A lot of those cooperatives still operating and providing service in Texas. And then the green is the competitive areas. That is when the restructured market occurred in 1999. one of the features of it was that for the first time in the competitive areas, retail customers, that is end users, you and me, could choose their electric provider from a number of choices. And you see in the green areas, which includes Houston, which includes a lot of the DFW Metroplex, several of the larger cities are incorporated in those competitive areas. Other larger cities like Austin, San Antonio, Denton have municipal and as well as co-ops I mentioned. So we have a great variety of kinds of companies providing service. Now here's a complicated little box for you. This is all the different kind of parts of the transactions that go on that ERCOT's involved in and that happen in the electric system. To keep it simple, if you start on the left, that resource entity, that's basically generation. That could be a coal plant, nuclear plant, a wind turbine, a solar farm, hydropower, anything that generates electricity. Then that goes onto the transmission lines. That is the big system that connects everything that I mentioned that we are monitoring and managing all day, every day. Then to the distribution system, which brings it close to the customer. And the distribution system takes that wire to your house or your business that every one of us has a connection to that system if we're getting electricity, down to the end user consumer. Now there are a lot of things, as you can see in this diagram, in the background going on. There are power contracts, there are various power marketing arrangements. People are trying to make sure that within this market structure we have that they're covering their bets, making sure that they're meeting all of their obligations to customers, their customers, to provide the power that's needed. And then our role is in, as I said, sort of as a big accounting agent as well as a reliability assurance group. And then we have the Public Utility Commission, an independent market monitor, making sure all the transactions are fair and we're not seeing market power abuse as we saw in some competitive markets when they first got started. So that's the basic system that we're managing. Now, it is still Saturday morning, so I want to warn you, this is the one you need to pay attention to. Okay? The next slide is the most important one from ERCOT's perspective, and it's much less complicated than the last slide, okay? This is the thing. The way electricity works is, as one friend of mine said, electricity that you are involved in, that's not a product, that's a phenomenon. Power has to be produced and consumed at pretty much exactly the same moment at all times. People are working, a lot of people with a lot of very smart people and a lot of smart money are devoted right now to studying energy storage, trying to find ways that when you generate electricity, you can keep it and use it later. For the most part, we don't see that. So the system has to be balancing all the time, demand and supply, and it's got to balance. And if it doesn't balance, physics takes over and does very nasty things. It not only doesn't work, but you can crash systems. You can burn up transmission lines. You can cause very serious damage to generating units. And as you're aware, these are very large infrastructure objects we're talking about. Not easy to fix, not easy to replace. So what our operators are doing every day is making sure that balance is there. Now, what are the ramifications of that? If a generating unit goes off unexpectedly, which they do, they are machines, sometimes they don't work. If it breaks momentarily, then the supply side goes down. Well, something's got to happen. Either the demand side's got to go down, which would mean somebody's power's getting turned off, or we've got to have some replacement supply immediately. That's why when we plan an electric system, we don't just plan it for, well, I need 100 today, so I better have 100. I need 100 today, I better have 100 and something. I better have a reserve margin, because those things are going to break down. And we often see, the demand side will accelerate in ways that may have not been predicted. Depends a lot on weather, especially in the cold winter, when you don't know how cold's that morning going to be. So you've got to be prepared at all times to add supply or reduce demand in order to make this system balance at all times. That's the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week job that our operators have to do. And people don't like it when we use the demand side without them being warned, right? People don't like it when the power goes off. They don't like rotating outages. And so we've got to plan a system that can meet the needs at all times and trying to minimize the times that we have to go into outages. Now, to give you a sense of perspective in ERCOT and where we get the energy, this chart, if you look on the right side of that chart, you'll see the megawatt numbers. That's megawatts that we use on a given day. And when I talk about having a reserve margin, we need to plan for the peak, right? We need to know what our worst day might be to be sure that we can meet it. Now, that day's not happening all the time. Hey, Rob, open up the app. Tell me what our demand is right now. What's our load? We call demand load, by the way. That's my main jargon for the day. But you're not always operating up at 69,000, 70,000 megawatts, but you better be ready for that day when you are. That day may come next week. That day could easily come in August of this year. So you plan for your peaks. Now, one thing I want you to notice when you look at peaks is, and this is, in ERCOT, because of the economic growth that Dr. Burgess referenced, we've continued to see demand growth pretty steadily through the years. You see dips. And look for one look at 2009 there. That was the recession. 2008, the economy had really big problems. We saw some economic slowdown. We saw a dip in energy. You can associate the amount of energy that's being used with economic growth, for the most part. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But then look at 2011 and 12. We continued to see demand growth, and in 2011 we saw this spike, and then went back down in 2012. Did we have a recession? No. Do you remember it was hot in 2011, right? The weather drove usage in a way that we hadn't seen before that year. So depending on the weather, depending on the economy, you can see fluctuations, but generally we're seeing an increase. And that peak number, like look at 2014, we continued to see general growth in energy demand, but the peak was down. Well, how could that be? Weather. That year, the summer peaks were not nearly what they were, so the peak is not always associated with the amount that's used. You can see them diverge, and that's an important factor for energy efficiency, which I'll get to in a minute. Now, how do we get that energy in ERCOT? This shows you 3 years, 2013, 2014, 2015, and the reason I show you more than one is because we're seeing it change. You look at that, the coal number, the yellow-orangish kind of part of the circle. 37% in 2013, down to 36, in 2015, down to 28%. Why is that? A lot of it has to do with gas prices. In ERCOT, the price of gas basically calls the tune as to what the prices are generally and what runs. And so we've seen the price of gas extremely low. It makes the coal plants, which have higher costs, less efficient to run, and because we're in a market, what happens every single day is the cheapest offer wins. If you can run efficiently and meet all the reliability rules, you're the one who gets picked. And if you're not the cheapest, you don't get picked. And that's how markets help keep prices as low as they can possibly be. So in a low gas price environment, we've seen coal diminish. The other big thing to change is you see wind continue to increase as a percentage of what we use in Texas. Last year, it surpassed on the overall usage of energy the amount we get from the nuclear plants in Texas, which was a kind of a big threshold to hit. Now, to drill into the energy generation a little bit more, a couple of things that are fairly unique to ERCOT. Let's need to be closer. This is our wind generation. Now, you start at 2000, that little blue bar said we had 116 megawatts on our system for wind in 2000. And that acceleration all the way out to over 16,000 megawatts in 2016. And we're anticipating increasing amounts of wind on the system. We've got more wind generating on the ERCOT system than anywhere in the United States. We are by far the largest in the US. If Texas were its own country, we'd be number 6 in the world. There's been a tremendous amount of investment, and it's because, you know how out in West Texas where it's pretty scrubby and there's not a whole lot of people living there, they had oil underneath it, and then there was always wind above it. Now we figured out what to do with the wind too. So there's an enormous wind resource in West Texas. There's a very, very good wind resources we're discovering in the coastal part of Texas. We're getting more and more generation there, and the technology of the wind turbines, as well as in the solar arena, are making it better and better, more efficient to use. So we're getting a lot of power out of there, but the one thing you might remember about West Texas too, is it's kind of far away from the cities, right? And remember, you've got to transmit power over wires, And so how do we manage that? Well, the state of Texas made a commitment to building transmission lines to bring the wind into the system, and at about a $7 billion cost to consumers, which everybody's paying for, all across the ERCOT system, we paid for transmission that could move the power to where the people are. And that's how we're able to get the amount of wind we get on the system. So if you like renewable energy, and this is not just true in Texas, but in other places, because the wind blows the hardest in places people didn't really settle, because they'd all be leaning like this, walking all the time. So most of our cities are not in the windiest places. Most of our cities are not in the absolute best solar sites. So if you like the renewable energy, you better like the transmission lines, because they come together. That's the highway to get the renewable energy into our system. And you see what this chart looks like, visually, the huge growth slope outward. We're starting to see something similar with utility scale solar. Get back here. When I say utility scale solar, I'm talking about solar farms that are built in mass. We're not seeing a tremendous amount of growth in rooftop solar in the ERCOT footprint, not nearly as much as they're seeing in, say, California or Arizona. There are various factors that account for that, but we are starting to see people get interested in large solar farms. We got plenty of sun, we got plenty of land, and those are starting to be built, and we're expecting more growth there as well. So we'll add that to the renewable portfolio that we're expecting to see in ERCOT. Now on to the demand side, and as Dr. Burgess said, what can people do to affect any of these large infrastructure dynamics that we're talking about? Well, take a look at this one. On the left is March 12th, 2015. We're looking at Dallas. We just picked Dallas. 69 degrees that day. Now the load, that is the demand at the peak in Dallas that day, was almost 33,000 megawatts. And this is the overall system demand on that day, okay? And a couple of things to note. One is, we have a very large percentage of our electricity usage that is by industrial and large commercial uses. A lot of places in the United States don't see that. But a lot of the growth that's continuing to come to Texas is around industry. It provides jobs, and a lot of the industry that's coming and providing jobs in Texas uses a whole lot of electricity. Petrochemical plants, anything associated with oil and gas. Those things use a lot of electricity, and we need to maintain a lot for them. So on a typical, spring day, a fall day, they're about half of our usage for the entire region, and that's not something you see in other parts of the country. Now switch over to the summer. There's a hot day. That day was 107 degrees in Dallas. We were just about at our system-wide peak at just under 70,000 megawatts. Now look who's using the power. About half, a little over half, is residential. Why is that? Air conditioning, right? It's 107 degrees outside, and all of a sudden, to keep our houses at a reasonable temperature, the air conditioners are cranking like crazy, right? So there's an enormous amount of energy that's being used on a residential scale this time of year, during our high season, right, in the summer, that we could have an impact on. And whether it's, if your house is not well insulated, if you don't have the new light bulbs, if you don't have the best air conditioner, if you don't have heat pumps, that sort of thing, it's going to affect your use of electricity, but it's going to affect the overall system. And various, like some of our retail electric providers and other utilities are offering customers various programs to try to get on to affect their behavior, to give them incentives, to try to reduce usage in those times. But one fact of life that won't change is it's not going to get any cooler in Texas in July and August, but there are technologies and new things we can do that can affect it. And some of those things are already starting to have an impact on a large scale. This data is from a couple years ago, and you probably are still seeing the same trend. But like I mentioned earlier, it used to be, if you wanted to know, is electricity use going to go up? You looked at gross domestic product, because they pretty much tracked the red and the blue line. For years, this goes back to the mid-70s, and you just saw, if we were seeing economic growth, we were seeing electric growth. And about 2010, you saw them start to gap a little, but then you really saw a divergence. That even when we were seeing GDP growth, the energy growth wasn't keeping up with it. And a lot of that has to do with energy efficiency. It's just people's houses are better insulated. You know, new houses getting built are more energy efficient than they were 20, 30 years ago. People are taking measures to change that. A lot of businesses are understanding the impact that their utility bills have on their business, and we're starting to see that change. That's an impact of energy efficiency, and we can continue to see that sort of impact as new technologies continue to roll out. Now, you know, on the other side of that equation, some of the new technologies are going to affect the amount of electricity we use. If we all get that new Tesla out there, which I think Phil's going to get me, right? We're coming? That's my door prize. If we all start using electric cars, and we all come home at 5 o'clock, and we turn our air conditioner to 72, and we plug in our electric car, my operators at ERCOT are going to see something different than they've ever seen before, right? I mean, we can increase our demand with some of these changes as well. Now, on the other hand, people are studying right now, you know, could those electric cars feed battery power back into the grid? That's a possibility. I mean, you know, we could be seeing a reverse flow, like when solar people with rooftop solar want to send power back onto the grid from their houses. So there are a lot of dynamics and a lot of changes that people are looking at now, but it can affect us both ways. And just one of the areas where we see this a lot, it's just an obvious one, is why I chose it, on lighting, which is around 20% of residential electric use. It's nothing like air conditioning in Texas, but you know, you see the dramatic differences in the kilowatt per hour usage just by switching light bulbs. And you know, we're seeing more technologies like that that are they're relatively simple to use, but they can make a big difference in folks' bills. One thing I want to mention, because I feel like I can't not mention it, as we talk about grid and new technologies, is grid security, cybersecurity. The systems that, like I said in the beginning, you know, ERCOT doesn't have a whole lot of physical assets, but we run the ERCOT electric grid on an extraordinarily sophisticated, IT-intensive brain. There are systems that are extremely complicated, and we couldn't do the things we do without really good IT. And this is getting even more important because, for example, when I talked about keeping it at 60 hertz, one of the challenges as the grid becomes more renewable focused is, often, you know, the wind in West Texas will be at 10,000 megawatts. Well, you know, we'll have a huge amount, and then you can just see it dip to nothing. The sun does go down. There are large shifts in usage, or rather in generation, when we use renewables that we didn't face before. Because when you turn the nuclear plant on, it just sort of runs unless it breaks. The coal plant just sort of runs. Same thing with gas units. So we need things that can respond quickly. And we need things like gas units that can respond quickly when the wind or the solar aren't there for us. But we also need the ability to monitor those and manage those you know, on a split-second basis with really good technology. So all that said, you can imagine why we and everyone in the industry are always very concerned about cyber issues as well as physical security issues, and work together with, you know, an alphabet soup, as you can see, of governmental agencies, of industry groups, both in the state and nationally. We've got the national labs and then places like this at UNT, you know, doing work on all of these issues, and there's always a security component to them because we can't let the wrong folks get their hands on this stuff because you can do some very significant damage very fast. So that's just a big piece of what we always try to emphasize as we look at new technologies and implement them. Don't forget we got to keep them secure. So my final pitch. What's the demand right now?
The demand right now is about 47,000 megawatts.
Okay, how does Rob know that? It's 47,000 megawatts. He's got our app. We have an app. You're welcome to download it. It is free on the Android or Apple Store. And why should I care if you download my app? I'm not selling anything. I'm a nonprofit neutral referee. Why should I care? Here's what's good about it. We'll send you, we'll push notifications if you'll accept them. If we're asking for conservation, which we very, very seldom do, because we try to let the electricity market work itself out, and it typically does, even on the toughest days. But if we ask for conservation, we'd like you to know. And the cool thing about the app and our Twitter presence and that sort of thing is, you know, if you, one of you, did this and you turn up your thermostat in the summer, that's neat. But when WFAA in Dallas gets it, they tell about, you know, 8 million people. So it's kind of an echo chamber for us. You know, the more people that know we're in a situation, the more it can help. And there are days, particularly when our larger, like industrial customers, want to make sure they're not going to pay a high price, or they have financial reasons why they want to come off. We will see the load, the demand grow, and then it sort of flattens out. It can have a big impact. Whether it's large scale or small scale, you aggregate enough small scales together, and it can have a big impact on our system. So if you're interested, we'd encourage you to do that in case we have situations where we do need the public's help to maintain that 60 hertz and not have the lights go off. And so we'd love to have you take a look at our work. So, do y'all have any questions? Man. Yes, sir.
On your early slide with the complicated box,
Yes.
what were the acronyms LSE and QSE? What do they stand for?
An LSE, see if I can swing myself back to it. An LSE is a load serving entity. That is an entity that is providing service to customers, kind of broadly stated. Because load is demand. So the load serving entity is someone who is responsible for providing power to a customer. That could be a competitive retail, that could be your municipal utility, anybody who's responsible for getting power to customers. A QSC, Queasy, some say, not the greatest acronym in the world, is a qualified scheduling entity. Qualified scheduling entities are basically who ERCOT transacts with. They're our counterparty. And they can be power marketers, they can be Denton, they can be, CoServe, they can be a lot of different kinds of parties, but the communication we have, whether for accounting purposes or for billing purposes or, in the control room, is usually we do counter with a qualified scheduling entity. So they can be lots of kinds of businesses, but they have to meet certain requirements and be able to communicate with us in certain ways. Yes, sir.
Back to your slide where you're comparing the dates.
In the summer?
Yeah.
And in the spring? Yeah. There we go.
I would assume that some of the residential uses is also for water sprinkler usage, electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an opportunity to reduce energy sources and two energy sources, electricity, if you have more efficient landscaping.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you another one, pool pumps.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked a lot with the pool maintenance industry since 2011 when everything was so tight. Because, that's one of those things too, that if you can schedule it and turn it off at a certain time of the day, it can have a big savings on something that, may not be making a big difference to you for that short period of time. But no, you're right. I think, anything that uses the electricity, if you're doing it more efficiently, can have a big impact.
But it's also saves water.
And saves water too. Well, that's true. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Germany has much more solar usage than we do, even though their climate is so much like Seattle, Washington, with all the clouds and such.
Mm-hmm.
This week they announced that, well, we do have a lot of solar when the sun shines, but we have demand that we need to meet when the sun goes down. Do we have a plan here to somehow store what surplus we might have during the day so we can use it when the sun is not shining?
We currently don't have a plan because we currently can't do it. But there are a lot of people, Tesla and Solar City and those guys included, who are researching ways to do storage on a utility scale basis. Right now, you can store electricity in batteries, but those batteries don't have the kind of life that can run Denton, that can run a whole city. So I think if energy storage technology is developed to where it can do that, that changes the game. Because the game now is you produce this supply and you consume it at exactly the same time, and that's the only way it works on a large scale. If you can change that dynamic, then yeah, you can, those wind turbines or solar that runs during the day, if it can be stored and used at a different time, you're in a different, it's a new business model. So that's why a lot of people are working on it, because as we see, well, for example, the West Texas wind blows the best, absolute best, most consistently in the middle of the night in the spring. Now, you know, there's the spring right there, right? When I have 32,000 megawatt peak, if I could hold that back and use it in the summer when I've got a 70,000 megawatt peak, that'd be all right. You know, or even use it during the day instead of night. So, because of the dynamics of a lot of the new renewable generation, the sun going down, the wind not blowing maybe at the right time, I think that's why you're seeing a whole lot of this research focused on storage now. Yes, sir. Oh, I saw you first.
So the new Denton gas plants, would ERCOT be able to purchase the energy back if we were to leave them running all the time? And if so, is there a preference, like are there preferred gas plants that you would run across the state? And if so, how does one become a preferred gas plant?
Basically, if you can run cheapest, we run you. So people bid in. I mean, wind turbines, the solar plants, the gas units, the nukes, everybody bids in, and then we, I mean, you know, every day we're doing well, not even every day, you know, hourly, we're doing selection of what ought to be running and dispatching those units. So if it makes economic sense for the person who owns the generation asset to bid in, and they bid in at a price that they get struck, you know, that they're part of the picture that day, we'll run them. So our systems are fairly agnostic to whose it is, or, you know, is it pretty, or, you know, anything. It's just, can it run most efficiently, and, you know, does it meet all our criteria for safety and reliability and that sort of thing. But that's how we do it in a market, and that's has been one of the big advantages of having a market, is that that's how we decide what runs all the time. It's not, you know, a utility builds several plants and everybody's paying for them, but maybe they're used, maybe they're not, or maybe they're inefficient and they haven't built a new one. We believe it encourages efficient new investment in things like these peaker units that, and you know, a peaker unit, heard what I was describing about renewables, that's going to be pretty important to us, because even if it only runs those times when, you know, ERCOT really needs it, it's probably going to get a good price because power will be scarce, and it also helps me level those fluctuations that we see in the system between demand and supply. So, yes, sir. Do you have that?
Are there any commercial level geothermal production facilities?
There are some. We don't have any of any substance in ERCOT of any magnitude, but there are some. I think more in the west, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
They're becoming more used in, if you can believe this, rural flat Illinois.
Hmm.
I would think that North Texas would lend itself topographically to geothermal. units.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to the geothermal experts on whether the conditions are right or the economics are there to make it happen.
Might it be something we could help by pushing and asking questions of people? Maybe we could get them interested in looking into it and we could use it.
Sure. I mean, I think pushing the research on these issues, asking the right questions about, you know, why this, not that.
If I have it in Illinois, why can't I have it in North Texas?
Well, and you know, some of them are geographic, topographic. Some of them, you know, the wind dynamics, for example, are different from the Texas coast to West Texas. You know, so there are some very specific things that have to occur to make certain naturally generated power sources work. Again, I'm not a geothermal expert, no claim to be, but I think that's part of what we look at is you may be able to have it somewhere else and not have it here, just depending on the. Yeah. Sure. Yes, sir.
So I have a Nest device at my house, and CoServe incentivized me, you know, to connect it to their system. Are those incentives that you guys pass over to you know, the different electric facilities, or are these things that they run on their own? Because that 50% can be a huge impact if my AC turns off at 5 p.m. based off CoServe also.
No, those type incentive programs, really pretty much you can think of it as anything that's not the transmission system, that's like between you and your provider, we don't have anything to do with, for the most part. I mean, mean, those incentives are things that CoServe has decided to provide, and make sense for them and where their customer base is. And those differ depending on, where you get your service. But we don't handle any of that, any of those.
So you don't incentivize CoServe to come up with those kinds of programs or whatever?
No, we don't, we're just not really in the incentive or policy-making business. We're more on the kind of engineering, implementing side of things.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then, other question, so that 11% for wind, is that I know you said it's an economics thing, right? It's the lowest price, but is it also a matter of how much capacity wind has as well, or is it kind of, is there a threshold you guys look for to say, I wanna have 10% of, the power from wind, or, how does that work?
We don't set that threshold or set that target. There have been, the state has established a long time ago, renewable targets for wind. We blew past them. Sorry. Ages ago, right? There are federal tax incentives. There's an investment tax credit and a production tax credit for wind, an investment tax credit for solar that drive a fair amount of investment in wind, in particular, and I think in solar. Those were extended last year in the overall budget deal. So, number one, you have a federal incentive on wind. Two, a lot of what drives whether the wind gets built is their transmission. There are a lot of places in the United States where the wind is, like in South Dakota. I was talking to a guy yesterday about this. There's a ton of wind in South Dakota. There's no transmission lines to bring it to the population center. So when Texas made the commitment to have everybody pay for the transmission lines to move that wind, that also, jumped up the investment incentive to run. And then I think being in a market like ERCOT, where you can bid in, and if you're the cheap provider, you run. And that plus, in ERCOT, we make connecting generation relatively simple compared to a lot of other regions. So I think it's a number of things that play into it.
Okay.
So
they won't mention how some of the renewable resources are price takers.
Oh yeah.
They quote the price.
Right.
Renewables are like that because they're base.
Yeah, so what Phil's saying is that there are some resources that just say, they'll bid in a way that says whatever the price is, I can run. That can have a big impact on the kind of prices we see. And in fact, in our market, we can have negative prices. If it's financially feasible for you to run even though the price is negative, because of your tax incentives or whatever it is, we sometimes see those kind of prices, which other generators aren't crazy for. Makes it kind of hard to do business. And I think it's one of the things I want to mention it, because I talked about the low gas prices and the low consumer prices that ends up generating. It's a challenging market to be in the generation business at the moment, because when gas prices are low, it makes it, it's harder for the other kinds of units to run. When prices are overall very low, it's just harder to make a return on whatever it is. So we're in a place where we're seeing historically low prices, which is, great on the demand side, but it's a little challenging on the supply side to make sure we have enough in the future. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the interconnects and some of the people that are promoting plans for like statewide higher renewable energy use. In Texas, there's been some plans in the past, and specifically, I guess there's one called the Tres Amigos project. Do you have any comment on the future of that?
It's been kicking around out there for a long time. What Tres Amigos, the plan is, it's a company, a private group of investors who would like to build an interconnection in New Mexico that would allow, I think the original idea was wind from West Texas to move to the west, to the western interconnection. It raises some tricky sort of jurisdictional issues for ERCOT, because we're not federal jurisdictional, and that's because we don't have the cross into the other regions. But I think there are ways that could probably be worked out in the way the thing's designed, but the project hasn't, as far as we have heard, has not really gelled to the point where it seems to be happening yet. I guess still on the drawing board. The investors figuring out if they can make it work.
Mr. Mackey,
sorry, I'm going.
No, we're doing well. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if this is on. I'm going to go ahead and invite Mr. Magnus to stay on. Dr. Graves is going to go ahead and get hooked up with the lapel microphone, and he will be the moderator for the panel. And if I can ask the panelists to go ahead and come on up, I'm going to introduce them just real quickly. Holly Rader is with Encore. Phil Williams, who is sporting a summer haircut just like I am, is from Denton Municipal Electric, DME, and then Curtis Trivet from CoServe will be sitting next to Mr. Magnus. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, and actually I'm going to do one more piece of housekeeping. Mayor Pro Tem Kevin Roden had another event that he had to run to. He apologized, but we wanted to thank him for being out here, and we have a couple of other elected officials also. We have Mayor Sue Tamel, who is up here from Copper Canyon. We're glad to have you here this morning. And former Commissioner Carter is here as well. Thank you for your service to Denton County, which he's continuing to do. Those of you that live particularly on the western side of the county, we thank him for his efforts in emergency services here over the past few years and helping to improve those. So thank you for your service. And then we also have bringing in from Senator Nelson's office. So glad to have some state offices. So with that, Mr. Dr. Graves, we'll turn it over to you.
Let's see if I'm all in one.
Yes, you should be. I'm going to pass this over to you. This could be a little bit of a challenge, so I'll ask the audience just to bear with. It looked like you were having a little bit of difficulty with scrolling through. You had to get fairly close to get up to it on the slides. On the slides, so you may have to step up when you're answering a question if you want to use a slide, particularly for the two of you. So with that, and then you can use the microphone.
Okay, well, as a follow-up to Bill's comments, we have a panel here, and we're going to offer, we're at UNT after all, university, we're going to offer a little Power 101 course, non-credited. Our speakers, we've already mentioned their names. Curtis Trivet, the Senior Vice President of Energy Service at CoServe. Now is it on? Ah, there we are. I didn't think it was on. So back to our panel. Curtis Trivet is the Senior Vice President of Energy Services at CoServe, and he will speak to power generation and the balance between energy needs and costs, and between fossil fuels and green energy. Holly Rader, she's the area manager for HomeCorp, and she will speak to managing and supporting the transmission line system in an exceptionally fast-growing geographical area. And third, Bill Williams. He's the general manager at Denton Municipal Electric, and he'll speak about services to help customers be smarter energy consumers. And Bill, feel free to jump in anytime. If you want to ask a question as well. So Curtis, let's start with you. Now, as I understand it, CoServe is involved directly in the energy market at the point of generation. So what options do you have, and how do you decide the most effective way to provide both safe and affordable power to your customers?
So, hello, is it on?
Yeah, it's on. You need to turn it up just a
Turn
little
it
bit.
up just a little bit. My voice doesn't carry very well, so. Okay, so, CoServe is, a member cooperative of Brazos Electric Cooperative. And Brazos, is owned by CoServe and 15 other co-ops in Central and North Texas. So Brazos provides the generation energy supply and transmission services for CoServe and the member cooperatives. Brazos owns natural gas and solid fuel or coal generation assets and operates those assets to produce a portion of the energy required by CoServe and the other member co-ops, but also buys power supply, buys energy supply in the ERCOT wholesale market. So Brazos does a daily optimization of their power supply resources. They have their own resources and the resources that they've acquired in the market. They decide every day which is the most economical to run. Is it their own generation resources, or can they buy power supply in the market and rely on a lower cost energy supply in the market? So So in looking at the way Brazos manages their power supply resources, risk analysis is a key component of that. And for example, during peak times, there can be a situation occur in the ERCOT system where there's a supply shortage, that if there's not enough generation supply, then we can see prices, wholesale prices in the ERCOT market spike to as much as $9,000 a megawatt hour or $9 per kilowatt hour. So if you have exposure to that wholesale market, that real-time market, then you can have extremely high power prices. So in order to avoid that exposure, Brazos manages those resources. They're making sure that they have adequate resources, either prearranged or contracted for, to cover all of the Brazos member co-op load, so that they're not exposed to that potential risk if it were to happen. So the other component of risk management is how do we deal with providing power supply or arranging for power supply as those member co-op loads grow. And at COSERV, we're sitting right in the middle of a very very large growth area. We're directly north of Dallas and Fort Worth, and we've seen very dramatic growth over the last 30 years since I've been at COSERV. But COSERV grew from 0 meters in 1937. We're an electric cooperative organized in 1937. So we grew the first 100,000 meters at COSERV over the next 67 years. Then from 2004 to 2016, we added another 100,000 meters. So we've seen very dramatic growth and very large amount of load growth as well. So managing that power supply is very important to us. So as the load continues to grow for the entire Brazos system, with COSERV being a large part of that, we need to make a decision about, do we build new generation or do we rely on wholesale market purchases to meet that load growth? And as we consider that question, the availability of wholesale market energy for purchase and the price volatility of that wholesale market power are factors that you have to consider. Would we be better off at the Brazos level to build new generation or to rely on the market, the wholesale market, for those power supply needs? So in addition to the Brazos power supply, energy supply portfolio, we also purchase energy from distributed energy resources that are connected to our system. We currently purchase energy from a 3.2 megawatt landfill gas facility that's on our system, and we have a 2 megawatt solar facility that we recently completed in June of last year. So we have about little over 1% of our energy supply that comes from renewable resources.
Okay, well, let me follow up with one more question here. And how do you, or I should say Brazos perhaps, how do you determine where and how to connect from the grid to homes?
So that would be a COSERV issue, and with all the growth going on in North Texas, the very first entity that we deal with in many cases are large land developers. So they're requesting service, we're extending service, extending distribution service, and continually having to upgrade our distribution system, our substations, our distribution feeder lines, requesting Brazos to build transmission lines. So we're continually having to adapt and change and upgrade our system to meet that new growth.
Holly, maybe you should first kind of explain how Oncor differs.
Well, of course, I'm gonna switch. Oh, there you go. Thank you. That works. First of all, I'd like to say I'm honored to be on this panel. There's a wealth of knowledge on this panel, and I'm just honored to be here today. But in comparison to COSERV, obviously we work with partners with Denton, COSERV all the time, especially in Denton. And so our comparison is, if you remember the slide that ERCOT had up, Bill Magnus that showed that there's a competitive retail market as well as municipalities and co-ops. Oncor operates in the competitive market. So we're a regulated utility company, regulated by the Public Utility Commission of Texas. And so what we do, as you can see, there's a few statistics on the slide. 10 million customers, about 3.3 million advanced meters. And so how many of you guys have gone out to West Texas? And then East Texas? And somewhere down south, you can see that there's a different range of terrain and obstacles that we have to face. Either way, the competitive market that we operate in, as Bill mentioned, our customers, well actually the end-use customers, can choose their retail provider. And so that's a difference. And so we like to say that we're kind of the FedEx or UPS of the electric delivery company, in which it really doesn't matter who makes the product or who you buy it from, we just deliver it. And so a large portion of our infrastructure are the poles and wires that we serve our customers to.
Okay. Well, Curtis spoke a little bit about how fast this area is growing and some of their challenges.
Right.
What are your challenges in such a fast-growing area?
You know, the challenges are, especially in this area, is working with our partners, but also finding the generation, finding the land. Years ago, there used to just be pastures out in this area. Now there's warehouses, there's housing developments, there's schools, there's so much economic development, and so that poses a huge challenge in how we're gonna infrastructure our structure, how we're gonna build, what corridors we're gonna use, and how we communicate to the public.
Okay. Well, Phil. Good morning. You also differ from the other two enterprises here. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you differ? And
Sure. So, in the electric market, in Texas or nationwide, given the, plus or minus percentage point, investor-owned utilities serve about 70% of the market. Co-ops serve about 15%. Municipal-owned utilities serve about 15%. And so that kind of gives you a range. In Texas, the top municipally-owned utilities, San Antonio would be the largest, followed by Austin, Lubbock, Garland, City of Bryan, Denton's number 6. So that gives you the top municipal-owned utilities. There are 72 municipal-owned utilities. And so that kind of lays the groundwork. Our services or service area is much more concentrated. So while CoServe, who still serves some rural area, may have 10 miles of line to serve a customer, we're going to have multiple customers per mile of line. And so it gives us a little bit less cost of service from a distribution standpoint. So it also creates another challenge of we have faster growth in some of those areas.
well, I'm sure you hear quite often from customers who want to speak to you about the high cost of electricity, how do we keep it down and so forth. So how do you manage customer usage and how do you support customer efficiencies?
So we have energy efficiency programs that we offer free energy audits. That includes going out with an infrared camera, going out and doing blower door test, and doing those things to try to show people exactly where they may be losing energy in their house. Whether it's through around windows, insulation that didn't get installed properly, or just weatherizing around the door, and showing those places where they may have leak around the envelope they're trying to air condition. And as stated before, air conditioning is a huge driver for energy use in Texas. That's why we have rebates for encouraging people to put in the highest efficiency air conditioner in the market, and try to do those things in insulation, because we're trying to manage that growth in the peak summertime. And the cleanest kilowatt hour is the one we never have to produce. And so that's what we're trying to encourage through our rebate program, is try to encourage people to put in that, help manage that growth.
challenges you face in making the decision to move towards, say, you spoke about the different sources of energy, so in moving toward renewable sources, what are the challenges you face in trying to do that?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that we have right now with renewable is the cost of natural gas right now. Natural gas drives the cost of wholesale electricity. And so the cost is so low that it makes renewable energy much more difficult to justify economically. Although we are seeing the prices of renewable energy come down dramatically over the past few years. So if we could go to the slide that shows the ERCOT wholesale real-time prices, I think that'll make a point. No.
Looks like a chart, doesn't it? Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, it's a table, and it's in my presentation.
Okay.
Keep going. Right there. There we go. So the average real-time price for electricity in ERCOT in 2015 was $26.77 per megawatt hour, or 2.67 cents per kilowatt hour. Off-peak prices were even lower at an average of 1.79 cents per kilowatt hour. So even though we've seen a dramatic decline in the cost of utility scale solar over the past several years, the best price that we're seeing offered out there right now on long-term purchase power agreements is 3.6 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Now that's really good for solar compared to what we've seen in recent years. It hasn't been 12 to 18 months ago that we were hearing prices in cities or other load serving entities that were locking in long-term PPAs for solar for about 5 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's only been 12 to 18 months ago. So we're seeing the price continue to come down, and in order to get those longer-term lower prices, in order to get those lower prices, we would have to lock into a long-term purchase power agreement with a 20 to 25 year term. So then the question becomes, will solar costs continue to decline from where we are today? And will we see technology advancements that dramatically lower the cost, say within the next 10 years? So if we lock in a 20 to 25 year PPA, then what kind of risk do we have longer term in being upside down on that price at some point in the future? So that's a concern and something that we have to think about as we think about locking in more renewable solar energy into our energy supply portfolio. The other issue is, well, what about distributed solar connected to our distribution system? And that does provide some value, but there are other factors such as a lack of economy of scale. The way you get really good price on solar is large scale, and you have to get into a solar farm that is 40 megawatts or larger before you see that price start to bottom out, plateau, and get you the best price. So it's economy of scale. There's a lower solar resource in this area. If you go out west, out into the Texas Panhandle where all the wind is, guess what? You get a lot better solar resource. There are fewer cloudy days, and you get more kilowatt hours per dollar of investment in a solar facility out there than we'll get right here in this area. Then there's land cost in our area, and everybody, I think, that lives around here knows how expensive land is. So trying to buy land to put a solar facility here is a challenge. It's going to add more cost to the cost of the solar facility. And then property tax, believe it or not, is a significant cost in owning a solar facility. So for distributed solar, looking at smaller scale distributed solar in our area is more than double the cost of a utility scale solar system that would be built out in West Texas. So while a small amount of distributed solar might be good, and we've built a 2 megawatt system on our solar facility, on our distribution system, and it's good. It's a good experience. It gave us a lot of intelligence about the cost of installing and owning a system, but you gotta question whether doing a significant amount of that at double the cost of what you would pay for from a larger facility out west. Some people might say that's not a very good business decision for you to do that, so that's a consideration. And, wind energy is more mature technology, and it's a lower cost right now than solar, but there's an added cost to deal with the intermittency of the wind energy. Wind energy production, if we could go to the next slide, actually captured this from some of the ERCOT reports. So each line on that graph is the average daily wind energy production by month. And so the three lines at the bottom of that graph are the July, August, and September wind production, average hourly usage for those months. So you can see that during the months when our load is the greatest, it's the big air conditioning load months, that's when the wind energy is the lowest. And notice that during the times of the day when our load is the greatest, which is in the afternoon hours, that's when the wind energy is lowest during the day. So you have that intermittency and the need to have additional backup supply. If you're going to rely on wind energy as part of your power supply resource, you've got to have that backup supply, which adds a cost. And in addition, during the off-peak season and the off-peak hours when wholesale market prices are the lowest, that's when you have the most wind production. So there's another economic factor that has to be considered.
Hi. You know, I moved to Denton from Manhattan, Kansas.
Yes.
And in Manhattan, I never saw any transmission lines.
Is the growth there?
Yeah, well, they were buried, okay? They were buried, they were underground.
Okay.
And of course, the transmission lines affect people differently in different neighborhoods and so
Right.
forth. Why can't we just bury them all here?
I know, the $1 million question. Why can't we bury all the transmission and distribution lines? And the things that we consider and everybody needs to also think of is that there's different factors when considering building transmission lines and distribution lines underground. First of all, especially transmission lines, it's the cost. It is highly costly to build transmission lines underground 5, 10, 15 times more than overhead transmission lines. And so ultimately, and I hate to say this, but ultimately this cost is passed on to the end-use customer. And so even though we haven't reached the prices as California or other states, if we do go underground with these transmission lines throughout our entire system, our prices are going to go up. And so to keep a low-cost, efficient system, we build overhead. Also, another factor is that the overhead transmission lines are easier to operate and to maintain. We have helicopters that hover over the transmission lines and make sure we're operating at see anything that needs to be maintained. And so it's easier to visually see overhead transmission lines versus underground. Going into distribution, we are building a lot of underground distribution, depending on what type of development is going in and if the developer decides to build underground. And so with that being said, there's also a cost involved. There's also building constraints. Is there enough room to put the facilities underground? There's water, there's sewer, there's other utilities, not just electric utilities that are underground and need to be in a certain right of way. And so when you think of that, and also the time difference to make repairs, to overhead lines, you can visually see them a lot easier, and our technicians can go out there, spot a fuse open, and close it, or see that a tree's on a line, and have the trees removed, and closing that fuse, re-energize, and have our customers back on. For underground service is a little bit different. You have to research. Thankfully, some of our technology is advanced enough to where we can kind of pinpoint where the outage might be or the fault might be, but even then, our technicians have to be on site have to use certain tools to actually determine where the fault is. They can't easily visually see where the fault is. So there's different factors when looking at overhead to underground utilities.
Bill, what upgrades do you recommend to customers as having the best return on investment when they make improvements to their homes or business for that matter?
So to us, the best return on investment are many of the tools you'll see out here in the workshop that Home Depot has out here. I mean, a caulk gun, simple as that is, you know, you ask for an energy audit from one of us, and with infrared camera technology, it can show you where you have leaks, and that's pretty simple to remedy with a Saturday morning with a caulk gun, and you can do wonders. And then weather stripping, installation, tinted windows, and then when it comes time to replace your air conditioner, going with the higher SEER rating. SEER is a measure of efficiency of the air conditioning system. Years ago, the SEER rating of air conditioners was like 8. Today, they're 16, so the efficiency has greatly increased. And by doing that, it gives you the graph that Bill talked to you earlier of showing how the electric demand related to the economy has decreased because we are seeing those higher efficiency appliances come in.
Well, and speaking of maybe upgrades and savings and that sort of thing, you know, why are utilities discontinuing solar incentives?
I feel bad for the solar industry because just for years, I mean, all my career, over 30 years, I've always heard, you know, solar was getting their price down, and they have gotten their price down. But since 2010, they've really dropped their prices. In 2010, the utility grade, or excuse me, residential solar cost about $200 a megawatt hour still, and that's dropped today to below 100. But utility grade solar has even decreased more than that. It used to be about 200 also. It's dropped to below 50 and in the 40 range. And so it gets to what Curtis was talking about earlier as far as the generation source to go more solar. The choice by many utilities is to do it at a utility level instead of a residential level because it's just so much more cost effective to buy land and put in a large facility of solar panels rather than one-by-one residential. The reason for rebates was to influence people to put in the most efficient appliances. You know, we used to give people rebates for putting in a 10 SEER air conditioning system. Well, then the industry started putting out, producing 10 SEER, that's all they produced, so we didn't need to give them an incentive to do that. So then we incentivized 12, then 14, now we're up to 16. And so you change your rebate program over the years to incent people to take that next step up that they might not take because it's more expensive. Solar panels the same way, that we're encouraging people to put in solar panels to help manage that growth now, but what most utilities are seeing is the greater and better investment is to invest in putting in utility grade solar rather than continue to influence and incentivize residential panels.
Well, Curtis, you were speaking earlier about the different renewable energy sources. Is there anything else you would like people to understand about renewable energy sources that you didn't mention earlier?
So we talked about the difference in cost between the distributed solar, the rooftop solar, and the utility scale. I think that's one good point to make. But I think people also don't realize that there are some hidden costs in adding significant amount of renewable energy into the grid, and Mr. Magnus talked to that a little bit in his presentation, and that's the amount of investment that you also have to make in transmission system, in grid support technology, because as we add more renewable energy into the mix, it creates grid reliability and grid support kinds of issues that have to be addressed with investment in other types of technology most people are surprised when it happens to them. If someone has solar panels on their roof at home or on their business, and the utility power goes out, their power still goes out. So it's something most people don't realize.
Okay. Well, Holly, let's, have this question. Since I'm a resident of Denton, anywhere else, how would I know if Encore is considering adding a new line or might be about to start some construction?
Right. Well, the thing is we actually have all of our transmission projects on site, on our website, www.encore.com. And so on that website, it shows the different routes in which new transmission projects have been proposed, where we're at, if the project has gone to the CCN process, which is the certification for convenience and necessity, which most of the projects we do have to be filed with the Public Utility Commission of Texas for approval. And so if you look on our website, it'll show you the status of the projects and any landowners or homeowners who have habitable structures close to, I want to say it's within 500 feet of one of the routes. They're notified by mail, but please visit our website. We're not as fortunate to have that in-use relationship as these two companies, but we try our best to meet the demand and to meet our customer needs. So, thank you.
Well, Bill, anything you might add, comment on? Questions you might have?
These guys are so smart. They covered it all. I think one thing, and I just kind of pick up on the point about as the grid changes, there's a lot of things, and I mentioned this a little bit before, there's a lot of things that, you know, we didn't think about that we're having to think about and deal with fairly quickly as new resources come on. The one I think of most, and we're doing a lot of study of this right now, is inertia, right? A large rotating mass, which is what, you know, coal plants, gas plants, traditional generation is, provides power to the grid, but it also provides other services to the grid that aren't things we buy. Just from a physics perspective, you know, that large turning mass has an impact on how the entire electric transmission system works. And when you start having a lot of generation that doesn't have large metal spinning mass, that's fine, it can generate power, but it has impacts on the system that I think people didn't anticipate until we started to see that in a big way. And so for us, at the grid operator, that means we're monitoring something new. You know, the operators never had to monitor inertia on the system before. You gotta figure out ways to do that. You gotta come up with the software and technology to make sure you're doing it effectively and all the time. And then on the policy front, you think about in our stakeholder process that makes the rules for the ERCOT market with the Public Utility Commission, you know, even up to Congress, you have to think about, are there policy changes we have to make, are there legal changes we have to make that make sure that, you know, the physics still works, that this big giant machine that we built, the electric grid, still works effectively as we expect it to. So it's an exciting time to be in the industry. I think it's a terrific time to be new in the industry because we're working on things that, you know, we haven't seen before, and the stakes are high, and we need to make them work.
Thank you. So Eric, how are we doing on time? Where's Eric? Out of the room. We've got a few minutes. Questions from the audience. Lucas, what about questions from you?
I've got a quick question for all of you. If you were to take priorities on one of these two things, you've got a greater supply of cleaner energy, and you have a more efficient use of existing energy. Which one would you put priority on? And you can't pick both, because if that would happen, we would have world peace by now.
I think Phil said it pretty well earlier, and I'm gonna steal your comment, but the most cost-effective thing you can do is the negawatt, we call it. It's the efficient, do things more efficiently, the energy efficiency piece.
Yeah, I think that's the thing we all look for, is how can we use what we got ERCOT more efficient, up to a point. When new technology comes out that is both more efficient and cleaner, then we look to those things. But until then, you try to look to use what you have in the most efficient manner.
I completely agree. It's definitely using your resources that you currently have more efficiently, in not adding any more cost to what our customers or our end-use customers have to pay.
Yes.
Well, to kind of continue on that, my understanding of why Encore offers a solar incentive is because of the PUC. It requires a general load reduction program, and Encore looks at what they get the most bang for their buck for. Now, they had increased their solar incentive this year, the budget over last year. So that would indicate that they do see some. Now, I don't understand for co-ops and munis, whether they have any requirement at all to do energy efficiency programs or to have, how they decide what is their best bang for the buck, because they say Encore does see solar incentives as being worthwhile.
Right, and we do, and we meet that requirement by the Public Utility Commission. A portion of our customers' bill does go towards energy efficiency and using that towards the program. So Encore doesn't necessarily directly have incentives. We have retailers in which we work with that offer these incentives to our end-use customer. But yes, any renewable energy is definitely great for the economy and will eventually help with the load, especially here in Texas.
For munis and co-ops?
So for municipals, we don't have a PUC requirement, but instead it goes to local control. So your local city council decides what our goals are. And so the city council in Brady, Texas could decide to do something different than we did in Texas. But certainly we have those incentives here.
So for the co-ops, there are no mandates that require us to offer solar incentives or energy efficiency rebate programs, but we do have an energy rebate program that we operate, and you can go out on coserve.com and read all of the details about that program. We also have some guys out here in the booth here in this building that can explain our program to you, and we have and do offer some solar energy rebate dollars to provide some incentive there. On the solar side, Phil, again, I think hit this one really well earlier. We think that with the cost of solar where it is today, and with the federal tax incentive that's there available for solar, that we don't see a real need to offer a great deal of solar rebate because of the cost and the incentive that's already present for solar.
Other questions?
Do you have any sense that the global issues of climate change will change any of this efficiency, cost-benefit analysis that you've been doing, shifts the system around?
Well, that's back to you.
Well, I really believe that we've seen that influence what's happening nationally already. That the federal tax incentives that are out there, some of the standards that have been developed, the amount of renewable energy that we have in Texas and in other parts of the country, I think that has influenced what we're seeing going on in this country. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the influence of that is you see new building codes. Every new building code that comes out for adoption, and Denton is just adopting the 2015 energy building code, and every one of those increases the need for requirements for the amount of insulation, the R factor, the amount of insulation put in, and increases building code requirements. So I think that's a response to those increasing building codes, a response to the climate change.
Okay. Well, Curtis?
I have to jump in on that because that obviously becomes a political question, and this is not, of course, a political discussion, but obviously the politics and the policy influence every decision that you all make every day. So I guess what I would say broadly, the whole purpose of our discussion this morning is what you can do as a consumer, as a family, as a small business. Yes, the policymakers are going to decide things based on political calculations. Elections will have consequences, but what can you do as an individual to perhaps manage things in your world a little bit more efficiently? A young hand went up, but that was just waving, not a question. Okay. Well, I wanted to give the next generation a chance to weigh in, because that's obviously, you know, when you talk about things like the political calculation, like some of the policy decisions that you've heard out here, some of these things will not occur within my natural lifetime, but they will within hers, and that is an important point. I do want to point out one thing, and I guess, Bill, several summers ago, my scheduler put me in a peaking plant in August when the outline of the 26th district was different, and I had a peaking plant within the 26th district, and someone thought it would be a good idea for me to go look at a peaking plant. Why August was selected, I guess it's because that's what they were working. It was one of the hottest congressional visits I've ever done, and that includes every single town hall I've ever done. So it was a truly remarkable. And you stop and think about the people who have to make the investments and have those plants and maintain, and yet they may only be used for a very short burst at a time when the demand is extremely high in the rest of the state, and those are probably some of the hardest working conditions that can occur. It was truly a revelation to me. There was also some discussion about the competitive renewable electrical zone, the new lines that were required by state law to be put in to bring the power from West Texas back to where the people are. And of course, Denton being in that line of counties that is just above the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, we had a lot of local discussion about where these lines should be located, and there was a lot of concern about green belts and new neighborhoods that weren't there perhaps in years past. So that's also a consideration when you're bringing the electricity that you're now generating thanks to the technology that allows the wind farms to exist, but you do have to bring the energy back to the Metroplex. I have received one criticism, and that is we didn't allow time for breaks. You may have noticed that I took a few minutes on my own, and I encourage anyone to do that at any point where they feel it is necessary. But I want to thank this panel for Energy 101. I mean, what a great concept. This is kind of the first time that we've done this as part of the summit, but it's helpful to understand how all the parts integrate together and how it all works when you flip the light switch on in your home. So thanks very much to this panel, and we are going to move directly into our energy efficiency with Home Depot. But I want to thank this panel as they make their exit. And Dr. Finley, thank you for moderating for us. Thank you. Next on our schedule is Bob Brower from the Home Depot. So Bob, if you make your way up here, we'll get the lapel mic for you.
Really? Now,
following up on the panel, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next presentation. It's by Ben Brower. Ben is with the Home Depot here locally. Instead of Ben is with Home Depot here locally, and he's going to talk about some of the specific resources that they have. The Home Depot and Lowe's or Ace Hardware, any of the places that you might be able to visit. Home Depot is nice enough, they actually have some of their items here, and so you can stop by their booth and actually see some of the improvements that you can make on your home to make it more energy efficient. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ben.
All right, can you hear me? That's good. Hi, I'm Ben. I work at Home Depot. I am a hardware associate. I do tools, batteries, screws, nuts, bolts, anything and everything. Everybody always comes and sees me. But I'm also a handyman outside of that. I also do weather stripping of all kinds. Garage doors, windows, all kinds of stuff. I don't have everything. Some of it's spread around the store, but I do know how to use it all. And when it comes to energy conservation, sitting up here listening to these guys who are CEOs and masters of their industry, I'm just a normal guy. I just fix things, and that's what I do. So if you need assistance or have questions about anything in your home, I have the answer for you at Home Depot. Me and my fellow associates can do anything that you need us to if we put our heads together. That being said, I saw some awesome thermal imaging pictures up here. I have a thermal imaging camera at Home Depot. There are assets to your different energy providers. They can send someone out. Certain energy providers can send people out to take these thermal images of your home and see where you're losing heat or losing air conditioning in the winter or the summer months. That being said, I heard you mention how easy it is to seal up a window or a door or anything like that. People think it's daunting. People think it's a daunting task. I teach the DIY classes at Home Depot. People get afraid when you put a tool in their hand that they haven't used before. Please feel free to pick up these tools and try them out. I'll let you try them out. Come in, I'll set it up for you. It's not scary, it's very easy. A lot of the times you don't need the tools of the trade. You can come in and get just a tool of call to fix a window. It's really very simple. Whether stripping as far as your doors, door sweeps, the threshold, the jamb itself. I have weather stripping for it all. Your ducting in your attic, your pipes outside, everything. I've got an entire table of products out here. From different garage door seals to different types of silicone caulking to different types of weather stripping that'll go all through the house, and I don't think I have more than 2 or 3 items on the list that are more than $10. Everything here is very energy efficient and very cost efficient and easy, very easy to use. But there are different types of caulking and weather stripping that you need to be aware of. Simple silicones are what you'll need for doors and windows. Very simple chemicals in here. It's really easy to remove, really easy to clean up. But you get to something that's made by a brand like Loctite. These are basically cement in a tube, and they will hold things stronger than you will ever need them to. It's very economical to come into the Home Depot and see what your options are. I have many associates there that can answer questions on any of this stuff because it's all so easy. From your garage to your front and back doors to every window in your home, you're probably losing heat or AC through each one of those. And it's really, really an easy fix with just a simple $6 or $8 purchase.
I don't think my energy provider does home audits. So could you tell us more about their thermal imaging camera?
I do have a couple of thermal imaging cameras. The one that I know of right offhand is works with your smartphone. They have an iPhone and an Android one. They are not incredibly inexpensive. Right.
So you have to purchase them.
You do? Oh yeah, you do have to purchase them. I do have. There are outlets, third-party places that you can call and have them come out to your home and audit. You just in the free market. But it's not incredibly expensive. You're just ruining use of their expensive. again, man, I'm a do-it-yourselfer. If there are any questions about how to use anything, what options are available to you, I got an answer for you. Ma'am?
I've not been in Home Depot in a while. Do you have established and ongoing classes that address some of the things that homeowners can do?
Oh, yes, ma'am. We have a DIY class every month. We do it the second Saturday of every month. We have a kids workshop class that we do the first Saturday. We have a do-it-herself class where we build different projects. In my last DIY I did for Father's Day, we do fun things with dad, daughter, dad, son, anything. We put some games and stuff. But
There's usually a board for this.
yes,
class.
there's a board up front that explains every class that we'll have. They don't always involve specifically what you were looking for, but by all means, come talk to me. Normally I'm wearing a Netwell orange apron with my name on it. My name's Ben. If you didn't get that, my name's Ben. If you're from Denton, come see me. I will literally answer any question. I'll take you through everything. We'll try things out if you need to. Home Depot is trying to be more customer service. We're trying to be the #1 customer service oriented business out there. I'm gonna plug us a little bit. I know it's not really cool, but personally, I will do anything I can to send you out of there with the knowledge that you need to fix what you can. And I believe that you can fix anything that I can fix. And I promise you that. I will show you what you need to do. It just takes someone showing you the trick. And weather stripping, 10 minutes on one window, you'll save. Now, I won't say a very high amount because you're saving pennies, and over time, this is really building up for you. But in the grand scheme of things, you're saving a lot. Just one window. If you have one leaky window, seal it up. That whole corner of your house is probably going to stay cooler or warmer or whatever you need it to be. Really very simple. And
Is there any way to weather strip the bottom of a sliding glass door?
there certainly is a sweep. Now, they can be pretty specific when it comes to the doors because the brand to brand, you have to have the right kind of sweep that goes in there. It's usually a track that it slides into. But if you find out the brand name of your door, we can get that for you too. My millwork department does all doors, windows. If there's any brand specific things, we can contact that vendor directly, very easily.
On the garage door, do you weather strip all the way around, just the bottom?
Normally it's just the bottom, but because the wheels, it's really easy to get things caught up in the wheels. But there are fins for the outside of the garage door that'll close it off. Not to mention there's products like Great Stuff out there. Everyone knows about Great Stuff expanding foam. It's really very helpful and it fills a lot of voids, but it can be dangerous. I was just talking to a fellow today about busting a door jamb. You can break a door jamb with it, because it swells, but it can also be shaped really easily once it's dry. So if you were to put it on the edge of your door and then shape it, you can make a sweep go a little bit further. Sir?
Are your classes listed on the website?
Classes are listed on the website. Not to mention the website is a great asset to the Home Depot too, because there are how-to videos on there. There are store locations, demos. We have a lot of things on Facebook too. Store to store. Each store has its own Facebook too, so we post things on there too. Our schedules.
I kind of a do-it-yourselfer, and I have windows, and I've gone to Home Depot a number of times to try to get quotes on windows that I might be able to put in myself, and I always get the same answer. Well, we'll send somebody out, and you go to your website, and there's no way to price out a replacement window. It all seems to circle back to, well, we'll send somebody out and we'll give you a quote, and how does one price a window out on your website?
Normally, we would sign you up with Beacon. We'll get your name, your address, and the next day, someone should contact you and come out and take a look at your house, measure your windows, things of that nature. I'm surprised that no one's come out, man. We love those leads.
Well, but then I have to have them install it. I'm saying, where can you go to number of years, after I sold my business, I worked kind of part-time in a lumber yard, and we sold replacement windows. All we had to do was measure, the openings, and, this was back in the Midwest. And, we're able to have a window made to that size, and, in a couple weeks, pick it up and put it in.
We can definitely do that. I have a lot of windows on the shelf, but no, they're not every size. I don't have every size. So if you have your measurements, of course, up and down, and then three across the awning, bring those in. We can get that window made for you. We'll order that window specifically if you already have your measurements. Of course we can. But normally, when they try to get somebody out, they're trying to replace all your windows, and yeah, they usually do want to install it themselves. But if you come in with a measurement,
well, that's what I mean. You can't go to your website and take with those three measurements and pick out whether you want low E glass or argon full or wood trim or vinyl.
Windows are a little special like that. We do have a millwork department that do their ordering through their system, through their computer system. The doors and the windows are both ordered very specifically, and so we can't just do it online. We do it through the millworks department. But Kevin's my department head in millwork. We'd be more than happy to help you. Yeah, but I've watched it put in that order. Unfortunately, I don't work in millwork, so their computers are like Greek to me. But they are very savvy and can get you a specifically ordered size window.
Thank you, Ben.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Stop by his table if you've got questions, additional questions. He's got a lot more items that you can actually see and can probably answer questions like the sliding door question. How do you resolve a specific issue that you have? And if you bring a picture in, can they help you figure out how to fix it? Probably can help you with that as well. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next presentation, and this is really kind of a switch. We've been talking mostly about construction so far. What we're going to talk about now is transportation and how you can be more fuel efficient in your transportation. If you haven't been out there, we've got a lot of vehicles. There's actually 10 of them that are on display out there. I encourage you to go by. If you haven't seen a Tesla, they've got one of the brand new ones out there. But I'm going to introduce Drew Whitmer. His information is in the bio packet that I mentioned earlier. Drew has given the update for us for several years, and you'll see that he's got a background with the Dallas Auto Dealers Association, but has stayed connected with the manufacturers here over the past few years, and is just a wealth of information. So with that, Drew, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you.
Did he take a look out?
I think my voice will hear. How can I turn that?
Clickers right here.
I just want to say today, thank you for being here, Congressman. Thank you for all your service you do. I know that you serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee and help the automobile industry, help the energy industry with all the things you do up there and make sure things work well for industry, but also for consumers. Well, I've been doing this for 7, 8 years. This is probably the most excited I've ever been to be here because there's nothing but good news in the automobile business, in the transit business, in the energy business. Everything is great. The first time I came here in 2009, I paid $4.50 for a gallon of gas. This morning I filled up for $1.89. In 2007, I was driving a car that got somewhere around 18 miles a gallon. Today I'm driving a car that gets 40. So that means I'm spending less and I'm polluting less and everything's good. Plus the fact that the new cars that are built today are far superior to what you all have seen the last few years. Let's see, okay. That's me, Capital Insights. We do legislative and business consulting. I've been in the legislative consulting business for coming on 35 years. My son works with me, and he's been in it for a little over 10 years with me. 2007 was the peak year for use of gasoline. You go back and look at the number of miles driven in 2007 compared to today, and we're traveling somewhere between 8 and 12% more miles and using less gasoline. And if you think back to 2009, I think nobody wants to remember 2009 because that was when the Great Recession hit. We were selling 9 million units a year. This year, we're going to sell 8
of new cars that are gonna be out there, but it also means more efficient cars, and they're gonna be using less gasoline as we move forward. In 2016, you're gonna see 8% increase in miles driven, so we're driving a lot more miles, and we're gonna use 4% less gasoline. Now, that's great for consumers. That's really bad if you're trying to build highways, because we finance highways through gasoline tax. That means we're driving more miles and we're collecting less money. So you're gonna hear a lot of conversation in the state government about the fact that we need to do something to fix that. Let's see, if you look at the average price of gasoline this year is $1.98. That means that we're gonna be spending somewhere between 20 and 25% less per month on energy for your automobile. But it also means that we're gonna be putting out less carbon. And not getting into the debate about global warming, but it's something that the industry's concerned about, is that 27% of the carbon dioxide that's produced or put into the atmosphere is put in by automobiles in our industry. And every year that we see fuel efficiencies come about, what happens is less and less carbon. And I think that what we're gonna see over the next 10 to 15 years is a continued increase in those efficiencies, which is good news for everybody. Now, when you think about the automobile business, all the headlines go to Tesla, and there's a beautiful Tesla here. And if you've never driven a Tesla, let me tell you, it's the greatest experience that you can ever have. It's exciting, it's different than any car that you've ever driven. If any of you remember what the big muscle cars were like back in the 60s, it's like that, except it's faster and it's quiet. And it's a great car. But when you think about the product mix, what's the reality? Combustion engines are still 97% of the market, hybrids are about 2%, and electric cars are 1%. Which means that they're really not going to have that big of an impact on what cars are bought or what cars are manufactured and sold. Every manufacturer out there has made a commitment to building and producing efficient vehicles, but also electric and some of them hydrogen powered cars. They're very concerned about the environment, but they're also very concerned about fuel efficiency. Pointing the wrong way. Oh, there it goes. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say something about Volkswagen and the emissions scandal. Because when I first came here, Dr. Burgess, you remember, I was very proud of the fact I drove a TDI. I had a little Jetta wagon TDI, got 47 miles per gallon in it. And yes, Volkswagen's contacted me, and I'm going to be reimbursed for the loss of value. But the reality is, this scandal is probably going to be the end of diesel in what I would call passenger cars moving forward. It was very promising because diesel engines produce a lot of energy and use less energy than does a typical combustion vehicle. But this scandal, alas, I think it's going to be the end of that. Now, hydrogen. Hydrogen's an interesting, see if I can go back. There you go, thank you. Hydrogen's an interesting concept. Hydrogen is not actually what fuels the car. What hydrogen does is produce electricity for the car. And the byproduct of the car is water. So you fill the car with hydrogen, it produces electricity, it powers the car, and it moves forward. The thing that we're going to see happening, I think, in the next 5 years and more so in the next 10 years, is how do we get these kind of products to you, the consumer, in an affordable fashion? Because, you've got to think about that. How do I get you a car, number one, that you can afford? Number two is the infrastructure there that's going to allow you to fuel that car so you can get in your car and go to Disneyland or Disney World and get home. And those are the kinds of things, kinds of questions that have got to be answered, not only about hydrogen fuel, but also about electric cars. I think that the last time I looked at the numbers, it would take $1 trillion of investment to create the same kind of infrastructure that allows you to buy gasoline or hydrogen and or electric to replicate that. And that's a huge investment for somebody to have to make. So I would guess that we'll have to have some help maybe from the government, some incentives, inducements still selling 97% of our product is just the regular old combustion engine. Now, the CAFE standards for 2025, they were, I don't know whether you saw the headline or not, but we're not gonna meet that goal. It was 54.5. But the EPA said, remember, that was a goal, that wasn't set in stone. We're probably gonna hit somewhere around 50 to 52, but the reason is the product mix. It doesn't have anything to do with the manufacturers not producing cars that can get that kind of gas mileage. It's because you, the consumers, still love your SUVs, still love your crossovers, still love the cars that don't get that kind of gas mileage. So I think that the same product mix is, for the near term, is gonna be the same, because unless something happens in the next 18 to 24 months, I don't think we're gonna see the price of gasoline go up much. And those of you who are from here in Texas, I'm sure you remember a few years ago, 2007-8, one of our, I guess I'm a Oklahoma State grad, it's one of my fellow alumnus, Boone Pickens, was talking about peak oil, because he was saying, we're done, we'll never be able to produce this much oil again, and consumption's gonna outstrip production. Well, he was right about peak oil. It's just he had it backwards. We can now produce more oil than we need, and if you, as I said, every year that passes by, we use less and less fuel for transportation and consuming it for our automobiles. You do that because this is what we're working on. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about, when we talk about transit efficiencies, if I didn't talk about light rail here in North Texas. We have the most extensive light rail system in the United States, right here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Most people don't realize that. And every passing year, your Denton County Transportation Authority here, we continue to see people use it more and more every year. And they're using it, they're planning it as part of their day. They're planning it because why? Congestion, time, efficiency. And this has to do with quality of life and what makes things happen. The exciting thing to me is that when you think about the fact that we have a high-speed rail that's actually in the process of being built between Dallas and Houston, you'll be able to literally leave Denton and be in Houston, Texas in 2 hours. And we do it all on light rail. And that's what the future's about. And when you think about efficiencies, when you think about pollution, you think about quality of life, you think about all of those things, these are things that we continue to invest in and see happen here in North Texas. And it's very exciting. If you haven't ridden the DCTA, you need to, because I think if you integrate that into your daily life, your plan, you'll discover that it's a lot easier to use than what you realize, and it also means that you don't have to look for parking, and I think you'll have a better time in your travels. The future. We're going to see continued increases in our fuel efficiency, and as that happens, that means we're going to see less and less demand, and I think prices are going to stabilize. We also have an increased supply. Recently, I saw a quotation that says that the United States actually has more known oil reserves than does Saudi Arabia. I know that sounds crazy because I'm old enough to remember 1974 when we were going to run out of oil by 1985. That's not going to happen. And as we continue with the efficiencies, it's going to work. I don't think that you're going to see pressure from environmental groups or the government go away. They're going to really be pressing the industry to continue with the efficiencies. And as that happens, and it has to do with a combination of being concerned about the environment, but also national security, the benefits are going to come to you. The product mix, though, I don't know about y'all, but I don't see people in North Texas not buying pickup trucks. Something you probably don't know is that more pickup trucks are sold in North Texas than any other part of the world. That's why Toyota's made a commitment, and they put their truck plant in San Antonio, and Ford and General Motors, Nissan, et cetera, they're all here and they all realize that. And, you know, it goes without saying, I think that their margins are a little better on pickup trucks than they are on cars. So basically, we're gonna have our cake and eat it too. And like I said, it's a message I enjoy getting, because a few years years ago, I sat up here and everybody was very glum, very sad because gasoline was going up, we were gonna run out, we didn't know what we were gonna do. Well, I think everything's great. I think the future's good, and we're gonna be able to have our cake and eat it too, and still live here in North Texas. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has. I didn't tell everybody everything about this, but I do appreciate your attention, and if you haven't bought a new car lately, do that, it helps the economy. And interest rates will never be lower, so there you have it. And you can buy passes to DCTA and DART too, so, you know, you can put that into your product mix. Thank you for your attention. Dr. Burgess, thank you for all you do, really appreciate it.
Did we lose everything here? All right. So, thank you, Drew, and again, Drew always provides an interesting insight. If we're gonna get from one place to the other, we still are gonna need our pickup trucks, aren't we? We now have Mike Martin, who's the North Texas Transportation Manager for United Parcel Service, so we thank you so much for being here. Look forward to what you have to share with us this morning.
Well, thank you, sir. Well, first of all, I want to thank Congressman Burgess for your service on the Energy Committee, everything that you do for us, and also everyone on his staff that helped put forth this effort today. You and your staff have done a top-notch job, and I know what it takes to put on a presentation like this. Also thanking Dr. Graves, the Provost, and Mayor Kevin Roden for having this opportunity. Special thanks to his staff, Robin Vaughn, Deputy Director, and Eric With, District Director, for inviting UPS to this function to be part of this world-class summit. Thank you. Again, I'm Mike Martin, and I'm one of the North Texas Transportation Managers for UPS. We're operating primarily in the logistics and operations of the tractor-trailer fleet within our network, local and nationwide. In an age of job skipping, I can say that I'm celebrating being with UPS 33 years, and much of my career has been in the Northeast of the United States, New York. This is my second time in Texas. First many years ago, serving in the U.S. Army, and now I'm proud to say that I finally made it back to Texas, in your district, sir, and up in Texas. So again, UPS will be celebrating 109th year of business next month. And, well, you can say that we're still working on our business plan, but we feel we can make it work. UPS is the largest logistics transportation company in the world, serving over 220 countries and territories. We employ over 430,000 employees, and we have the 7th largest airline in the world. We have one of the largest privately owned databases and one of the largest cellular networks in the world. If you think about when you ship a package, and that guy has you sign, anybody ever signed for a package? All right, they go back, they put it in a box, that ships off to Jersey, and it goes all over. It's tons and tons of information that comes from that. We also employ currently the largest transportation project in the history of transportation to maximize efficiencies, and UPS has a $1 billion commitment to it. It's called the Orion Project. If there's something called a culture at UPS, it's a culture of efficiency for fuel, energy, and resources and time. UPS was created by a group of teenagers on bicycles and on foot over a century ago. And over the years, built up by a team of engineers, and through the decades, UPS has rebuilt itself from foot, bicycle, Model T trucks, tractor trailers, big trucks, aircraft, and now we're in the age of information and technology in our global markets, as you can see. It's critical to understand the difference between the efficiency of a thing and a truck or an aircraft or a facility, especially our network. What we have is a network in place that makes us efficient. You might think of that if we were to substitute a more efficient truck for like a smaller truck. A smaller vehicle will get more fuel economy, okay? But if we put our packages in the smaller truck, we now need 2 trucks. So we just burned up all that fuel. So we want a bigger truck that's more efficient. And so with that, that's what we look at the efficiency of the global network. We measure it in terms of packages per unit of energy that we consume, not just miles per gallon. So we look at the bigger picture of the company. One of the tasks we have, as I mentioned, is called Orion. Orion essentially is what order do we deliver the packages in? Okay, through what it does, it maximizes our fleet's package delivery movements and optimizes our efficiency and turns into fuel and energy savings. We have approximately 100,000 drivers on the street every day. Now these are the little brown trucks. That doesn't include tractor trailer fleet. Right? And just to give you a picture, okay, 100,000 drivers. With this Orion project, we're looking at, even if we say 5 minutes, and our goals are much greater than that, but 5 minutes per driver, that's $105 million a day of savings. And then the fuel savings and what our footprint is to the environment as well, because we have a smaller carbon footprint as well. Okay. So again, it's been going on for 10 years in development with algorithms and distances. And so our goal here is by 2017, we're looking at 10 gallons per driver. Okay, not to mention, again, like I said, our carbon footprint. There's another feature to it. What kind of vehicle and equipment we have with aircraft technology. Anybody been on a plane or gone your love or anybody recently? They got those little winglets, those little tip-ups. Those save a ton of fuel. Even if it's not a ton of fuel, any fuel is good. And we've retrofitted every one of our fleet with that. We currently have 8,000 alternate fuel vehicles in our fleet. Liquid natural gas, that's the cold stuff. Okay. Compressed natural gas. In fact, we have a tractor that's sitting out there right now. You're welcome, come take a look and take a look at it. It's really neat. Okay. We have propane, diesel, electric. There's 5 vehicles currently in Houston that are straight electric. And we're also experimenting with fuels such as hydrogen, which we just talked about, and biodiesel. When moving a package, what we do is we look at modal efficiency. How do we move the package? On a truck, on a train, because by the ton, you can move a lot more freight with the amount of fuel that you consume, or by the air. Always looking at making sure it gets there on time. And our network really will dictate that efficiency automatically. So these are a few considerations on how we create a network of efficiency. And roughly 1 billion gallons of fuel is what we consume a year. And we claim to be the sustainability leader in the industry. And in doing so, we want to make sure that we're making the planet better in terms of the fuel we consume and the emissions that we produce. So our subject today has been on fuel efficiency and optimization of resources that exist. And no one knows more about that than UPS. UPS is essentially a rolling laboratory for fuel and energy efficiency. We're the tip of the spear in the infrastructure of that. And we run 1 billion miles a year in that laboratory. And what we're running are the CNG, the LNGs, propane tanks, okay, to make it more efficient. And in doing so, we transfer the cost to the customer as well. Everybody likes to pay less, or at least not to go up. So at UPS, currently in Texas, in the Texas Triangle, I've learned that we call it, we have over 300 vehicles, and within the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to double that. So that being said, we're using less fuel, becoming less dependent on foreign oils, and we're using a Texas product. We're using that Texas product. So as you can see, UPS is more than just the cute guy or the cute gal that comes by and delivers grandma's package to you. It's chock full of technology. We have a network of efficiency and optimizing our resources. And again, just to be the leader of sustainability in the industry, but we want to make a global impact on the planet, America and Texas, with our efficient use of fuel and obviously, fewer emissions in the air. So I just wanted to pull the curtain back a little, just to see what's behind it of UPS. It's not just a little brown truck. There's a little more behind it than that. All right. And I thank you for your time, and it's been an honor addressing you. You guys have any questions? Please feel free. Thank you. Yes, sir.
You have been recognized, UPS has been recognized as having the most efficient truck maintenance program, vehicle maintenance program of any industry. In fact, it was sold to other companies in the past. Is that still happening?
The maintenance program?
Yes.
We do have a rigorous maintenance program. Because in preventative maintenance, what we find is breakdowns, especially in the tractor trailer fleet, any fleet really. But the first thing is, if you maintain the vehicle, they're gonna run cleaner, and they're gonna run more fuel efficient, and really, at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. But to not have breakdowns and service disconnects, again, that would be the second thing as well. But we do have a program in place that does, and other people do modules after that. Good question, thank you.
I was with Frito-Lay, and of course, we have a lot of vehicles,
Good company.
around, and we utilize the programs that Joe would utilize.
Okay. Sir?
Ram Dutt from the University of North Texas. Do you have a telematics program, and how is it going to help people?
Yes, we do. In fact, it's funny you should bring that up. We only have a finite amount of time here. But UPS developed telematics. Part of it was a company years ago, Tomorrow, and it started with tracking of vehicles and whatnot. But we are highly involved in that. Our drivers actually are told with this Orion program now, if you're at the wrong house, it tells you it's the wrong house. And UPS is a leader in the industrial engineering side of it. Okay. Time measurement. We know which foot to step off, the left, then the right.
Right.
And how many milliseconds it takes to do so.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And so in times, and that goes right into the time, and we have done that from the beginning with Jim Casey in 1907. They measured the time since then. And so that's what helped us.
That's also fuel efficiency, that has impact on fuel.
Yes, it does. In fact, some of you may have seen like Discovery Channel. I like Discovery Channel, History Channel. And they have a program on UPS. And one of the things they highlighted was, why does UPS take all these right-hand turns? Because when we loop, we call them loops, we map this out. And let's say you have 6 consecutive streets. So you take one street, miss one, come back to the other. So you're constantly in a right-hand turn. What happens in yourself if you go into a left-hand turn, and if you go anywhere? You're stopped, you're waiting for a light, you're waiting for somebody. It also puts you at more of an at-risk, potential at-risk situation, because you're crossing into an intersection or something could happen. So it's much more efficient to do that. So from a fuel economy standpoint, yes, or efficiency, not so much economy, but efficiency, yes. Great question, sir. Any others?
One last one. I'd like to compliment UPS two things. One is I had a brother retired from UPS. He's enjoying his retirement. And secondly, I work for a company called Navistar for International Trucks. And we're proud to know that UPS I presume you're still using their trucks.
Well, thank you, sir.
So thank you.
Thank you. Congressman?
And his truck is out to the right. It's in the right parking lot as you leave. If you're interested in taking a look at it, they've got it on display out there.
Let me just do this before we completely finish up. We have a number of our summer interns who are here today, and these are young men and women who they work for very low wages in the they work for nothing in the congressional office. I hope it's a good experience for them, but they're not working for me, they're working for you because you are the constituents of the 26th district, except for our friend from Duncanville, who I guess is not here with us anymore. But Ethan Eichhorst, who's been running the shop up here, is is from Sam Houston State University. Karen Alday, who may be up front, is with University of North Texas. Greg Klein, who also may still be up front, is with Texas A&M. Gloria Stedman, and I think there's Gloria in the back of the room. I'm sorry, Olivia Stedman is with Lindenwood University in Missouri. And Andrew Urich is from Hardin-Simmons University. And we want to thank all of them for getting up early on Saturday morning and being with us. And of course, you know my staff, Robin Vaughn, who kind of runs the office in Lake Dallas, who does all the advanced work and makes sure everything works well when we get here. Melanie Torres, who does the constituent casework for me in the Lake Dallas office. Joan Self, who will probably sign you in up front, who has been with the district office. She doesn't like me to say how long. And of course, Eric Wiz, who everybody knows because he's everywhere around in the district when I can't be. So thanks all to my staff for getting up early and doing this morning. I just, sort of the last observation is remember the focus of this, and Mike, I do so appreciate you being here. And Commissioner, I appreciate your question too, because one of the things that I wanted us to focus on in this group is what can I do? What can my family do? What can my business do? So one of the things you can do is ship with UPS because they're clearly the most efficient shipping company. But the comments about the maintenance, and that's something we do forget. Just like for your own personal health, if you get your regular checkups done, you're going to live longer and healthier and have fewer medical bills. The same is true for your vehicle, and you do need to take those steps for the preventive maintenance. It is always important for me when I have a group of people together, we talk about anything to do with the automotive industry. It is so important. If you don't know how to check your car against the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration database, that you figure that one out. It's easy to do. There's a vehicle identification number. It's either the lower left-hand side of your windshield or just inside the driver's side door on the back door post. That vehicle identification number can be entered into a database that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has available at safercar.gov. That's safe with an R, car.gov. Check to see if your vehicle is one of those that is the subject of a recall from the inflatable airbags, because that is such an important thing for you to know as an individual. If you have a wife or husband or son or daughter who drives a vehicle, it's important that you know that about their vehicle as well. I see we were joined by Nick Sanders from the Trophy Club, Mayor of Trophy Club. Thank you, Nick, for joining us. Any other elected officials that I should recognize? I'll open it up for any last questions. Certainly want to thank everyone for being here. All of the exhibits out front are going to be open for about another 30 minutes. So do take some time to go through those and look at those and familiarize yourself or educate yourself. A lot of opportunities for ways that you, again, as an individual, as a family, as a small business, can use your energy or make your energy dollar, make that purchase more wisely, and make that dollar go farther. It's been a great morning. I know I've learned a lot. I hope you have as well. Any last questions before we go out to the exhibit halls? You've been very good. I'll see you out around on the exhibit front. And did you have a question? Or just waiting? Okay. Thanks very much, everyone, for being here. I appreciate it. And see you next year.
I hope so.
Hey, Nick, you're everywhere. How are you? Hey, great recognition of your wife. I saw that. Commented on it.
That's where she spends her time. Volunteer. Somebody else I do. Yes, how do you get to see you? Feels good to see you. Let them walk around.
I'm glad it's cold.
Oh, you guys are my favorite. From like March on.